Okay, the Midwest definitely doesn't have the steepest or the deepest across the ski world, but could it be one of the best regions to be a ski bum at? I'm kinda convinced. What's going on, Midwest skiers and riders? Matthew Zbransky with MidwestSkiers.com, and today we are covering a topic that just a handful of years ago I would have thought this take would have been absolutely crazy, but the older that I get, I begin to think that the Midwest could actually be the perfect place for those that love our sport. Now, I know not everybody is going to agree with me on this one, but I hope it might open some of your eyes to how valuable our region is for the industry. I also hope it sheds some light on the value of skiing and snowboarding in the Midwest, but let's just start with the basics. What is a ski bum? Because, well, I think there are two versions of a ski bum. The first is somebody that lives and breathes the ski industry, meaning they work in it and are around the industry, basically devoting their life to it. These individuals typically live in a ski town and spend any time not working on the mountain, either skiing or snowboarding. And then there's what I would call the corporate or professional ski bum. Basically somebody who works a pretty typical career, but just loves to ski or snowboard. They get out every single weekend, but they also make midweek trips and will often spend their time off on ski vacations. And for those in the first category, it's pretty obvious that living in a Western town is going to trump any Midwestern argument. You'll have close access to the mountain, phenomenal terrain, and the ability to sneak out whenever you're not on the clock. However, limited career and family options coupled with a high cost of living make this an unrealistic option for a lot of people. For the second version, the corporate ski bum, I think that there's a legitimate argument for the Midwest for those that have a more traditional career and love skiing and snowboarding. Let me explain. Let's start with our first point, the lower cost of living coupled with tons of viable career options. It's no secret that the Midwest is riddled with major cities. In fact, Chicago, Detroit, and the Twin Cities all rank in the top 20 when it comes to the US's largest metros. This translates to plenty of career options regardless of what you or your spouse do for a living. Additionally, the cost of living in the Midwest is generally lower than that of the West. If we were to compare, say, Minneapolis, where I live, to Denver, we'd be looking at about a 5 to 25% increase in costs, while actually earning a little bit less as well if you were to be in Denver, of course. There's always going to be ways around this, such as living further from the city, and some cities are going to be more expensive than others, but generally speaking, the Midwest is more affordable, meaning that we can free up some of that capital for ski trips, but more on that a little bit later. Number 2, skiing and riding in the Midwest is significantly cheaper. Most of our season passes in the Midwest fall under $500 and sometimes can be even as low as a couple $100, or less than a window price ticket at some of our friends out west. We're not gonna name any specific names here, but the Midwest also has the lowest lift ticket prices of any region in the country, averaging less than half the price of the Rockies. These lower prices are especially great if you have a ski family, as you begin to multiply everything by 3, 4, or 5, only adding to the expenses. And do your kids really need to be skiing 3,000 feet of vertical? Probably not. But let's say you're rich, and you prefer to ski the biggest and the best. Well, you still have to get there, which brings up my next point, accessibility and the ability to ski daily. This is something that I really undervalued until later in life, but being so close to so many ski areas is a blessing, and it's the main reason that I'm able to ski as much as I do. Within 30 minutes of where I live, I can be at a handful of ski areas, which makes it easy to pop out and ski for a couple of hours, something that is near impossible out west. Typically, it can take well over an hour to get to the mountains from the cities out west, and once you start to factor in traffic, well, let's just say you might be spending more time in your car than you will skiing. And then there's the time spent loading up the family for each of these long trips and potentially staying overnight, which only adds to the expenses and the travel time. Additionally, the Midwest has something that the West generally doesn't: night skiing. This only adds to the accessibility factor, making it even easier to pop out after work for some laps before packing it home for the day. Given our short winter days as is, this is a huge plus for getting even more days in. Or I guess, nights. But seriously, the number of times I just decided to go skiing after work because maybe I had a rough day or just didn't have anything to do that night is pretty crazy. I always keep my gear in my car just in case, and often it pays off. At the end of the day, I'm just one of those skiers who wants to be out skiing, riding lifts, and socializing. And if I was out west, I doubt that I would get even half the number of days in I get here in the Midwest. And speaking of halves, let's talk about the other half of the season, which is summer. And I absolutely love summers here in the Midwest. It's typically not too hot, not too cold, and there's plenty to do with lakes practically everywhere. Boating and cabin culture is huge in the Midwest, and truthfully, I love the reset from winter. Our seasons in the Midwest are, in my opinion, the perfect length. You're starting to think about snow in late October, and by November, we generally have a handful of options to ski at. By the time the middle or end of March hits, it's time to move along, and pretty much like clockwork, that's when spring moves in for us. This gives most of our ski areas in the northern part of our region around 100 to 120 operational days, which in my opinion is the perfect amount of time. Just enough to leave you wanting a little bit more. And the great thing is, if you want more, heading to the mountains couldn't be easier, which brings up my next point. But before we dive into all of that, if you enjoy content like this, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us with what we're doing here at MidwestSkiers.com and helps us continue to bring you free content such as this. But last and certainly not least is the ability to get to Denver or any other out west town in a matter of hours, especially here in the Twin Cities. Okay, so you're craving the mountains and you want to ski steeper and better terrain. Well, the good news is it's easy and super affordable to head out west. Minneapolis has nearly 20 nonstop flights to Denver every single day, with most being under $100 for a round trip. The best part is the flight is just over 2 hours, but when you factor in the time zone changes, it's basically an hour-long flight, meaning you can easily fly in for a weekend of skiing and snowboarding. So remember all that money that you save from living in the Midwest? Well, you can use that to go on a few Western trips each and every year and still come out ahead. The point is, with a bit of planning, you can mix in plenty of high-level skiing throughout your season that pairs super nicely with your daily skiing and riding at your local hill. Okay, so am I going to convince a diehard skier to move to the Midwest for skiing? Probably not. But I have to say, I absolutely love it here. When my wife trapped me in the Midwest, I thought for sure that my love for skiing would fade, but it actually did quite the opposite. I began to love the sport for so much more than the super steep terrain, endless pow days, and epic tree runs. I found myself enjoying the daily practice of skiing, the social environment it brings, and the relaxation you can get from being outside in winter regardless of where you are. Now, of course, like all of you, I crave the mountains, but I'm lucky enough to make it out a couple of times a year to scratch that itch. And you know what? I kind of like it better that way, because I cherish it more. So, am I going to convince everybody that the Midwest is a perfect place to be a ski bum? No. But for those of us that are here, realize it's actually a pretty special place. But what do you think? Are you a Midwesterner who enjoys skiing and riding in this region? What points did I miss? Drop them in the comments below. But until next time, I hope everybody has a great week. Pray for that snow, and I'll see you out there.